The Fly 1958, starring Vincent Price, is an absolute classic, one of the best science gone wrong horror films from the 1950s, of which there were no short supply whatsoever. Definitely, it has endured all these years as kind of one of the greats. And while, of course, the remake from 1986, the Cronenberg film, that always kind of stands as an example as like one of the best remakes, one of the remakes that's improved on the original, which I agree with. I absolutely do. This film certainly has its place, and it's a great film in its own right, and absolutely worth seeing. And of course, October horror film viewings, you gotta have a little bit of Vincent Price in your viewing, right? He's the man. He's the horror guy. So definitely worth a look this Halloween season, worth revisiting also. And if you haven't seen it, I'll warn spoilers. Even though it's several decades old, and even though its own kind of framing device kind of spoils the movie, actually, it's still worth kind of going in fresh. So if you haven't seen it, if you haven't seen the remake either, drop everything you're doing, watch those now. But I mean, basically, the concept of the movie is again a science gone wrong kind of picture. It's a scientist who has developed the technology of teleportation, and things don't go quite the way he envisions them, and he basically turns into a half man, half fly, and the fly turns into a half fly, half man, basically, and it's kind of all about what happens to him, and basically what happens, he's killed, and that's like the opening of the film, how his wife brings him into the family's factory and crushes his head, and destroys all the evidence of his scientific abomination, he destroys the lab, and all that. But she's telling the story to her brother-in-law and the police. So that's how it's kind of framed, which I don't know. Maybe they didn't need to do that and like kind of like give away, I don't know, the dramatic climax between the husband and wife, and having to be killed, but it works just fine otherwise, and it is an intriguing movie. Uh, with this technology, and especially at the time in the 1950s, it does pose kind of the questions, the head scratchers that all great science fiction films kind of strive to provoke, to ask us, the audience. Is man playing God, and things like that? Can God and science truly coexist in a certain way? And the scientist, of course, he makes the argument that yes, of course. I mean, a just and reasonable God would, of course, give man the ability to understand the world around him, and to try his very best to make the world a better place, and all that. So that's an interesting concept. A tale as old as time. Great science fiction always kind of asks that kind of things. Maybe that's why I like a movie like Prometheus, which asks those kinds of questions, and lots of other movies, of course, kind of do that with Frankenstein, and all that. Like I could go on with a list forever and ever, but I like that concept, and I like the science fiction behind it. Like again, at the time, you have to keep in mind. Like they even mentioned in the movie, like, well, you're not afraid of electricity, are you? Like this brand new thing called electricity. Um, so there's stuff like that, and of course, with his experiments, as we learn, he's a fully devoted scientist. He's obsessed with his research, and obsessed with this concept, and being able to teleport, to transport matter across the void, basically, and all that. And if things are a little bit, they don't go so well with his early experiments. Like he'll take like a plate, and he'll transport it from one pod to the other, and it'll come out backwards, like made in China. It'll come out, or made in Japan, or whatever it was. It'll come out backwards. Like something's not right here. Then like he tries a little later with the cat, and then the cat doesn't even come out of the void, and it's actually pretty funny. You can like hear like a meow in the void while he's like looking shocked, and all that. So it's kind of cheesy and funny in that respect, but still compelling with the science to it. And the bulk of it is like once we kind of learn all this and see where he's found himself after testing it on himself, and of course the fly getting into the machine and kind of the mixture between man and fly occurring, and the swapping of partial parts of their DNA of their bodies and things like that. The wife is trying to find this fly, and like their son also is in the movie, like saying, "Oh, I found this fly with this little white head, little white arm," and she's like, "Oh, that's him. We gotta find it," and all that. But of course, since obviously we know from the beginning of the film that unfortunately doesn't work out. But in the end, we get kind of the reveal of this half fly, and of course, we get the reveal in a scene a little bit later into the film, near the climax of what the scientist now looks like, and of course it's nothing like the the remake, the Jeff Goldblum film where he's like slowly turning into flies. It's pretty instant with the transformation. So he has like this fly claw and this fly head with like the big bulbous eyes, and like we see like the point of view shot of like how a fly must be, how a fly must see, right? Like all like the kind of kaleidoscopic kind of vision point of view that we see of like the wife screaming and all that, and it's really good. I mean, this is a movie that it's more, I don't know, family friendly than the remake, of course. Like I did see this one first, so I do have kind of pleasant nostalgic memories of watching this on cable many years ago. And it's definitely a movie, like if you want to show a kid some horror movies, definitely start with like kind of the 50s stuff. It's obviously a lot more tame than today, and it's something that's it's not, I don't know, it's not like bone chillingly scary or anything like that, but it does bring up these interesting concepts, and it does make you feel for the characters. Like you do feel for this husband and wife who unfortunately have to go through this ordeal together, and the unfortunate catastrophe that occurs in the pursuit of scientific discovery. So it's a tried and true tale. And I think Vincent Price is absolutely great. There's kind of like a love triangle kind of element to it, where he is in love with her, and like his brother was the more charming one, and things like that. So there's some good drama kind of put into the midst of all of this, and I liked all that, and I liked how they resolved the movie. And of course, the pretty much the infamous ending where we finally, after all that, after all the searching, we find that half fly, half human in the web, in the spider's web, go, help me, ah, and all that. And it's great. It's absolutely great. It's a very memorable and distinct kind of movie. And I think that's why it kind of stands out above many other movies like this from the 50s. So I think it's an absolute treasure. This great movie. Not to mention, it is Canadian. It like the original novel or short story was written by a French Canadian in original French language, and the movie takes place in Montreal, actually. And it's also kind of cool, of course, that like the remake, it's directed by one of the most famous Canadian directors of all time, David Cronenberg, and it is set in Toronto, as far as I know. They don't explicitly say it, but here you can tell it's Montreal, because like at the end there's like police cars, like Montreal police, things like that. So it's great. It's a great movie, proudly Canadian, I guess. But I feel it's absolutely one of the best. Absolument. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. If you don't mind the spoilers here, well worth checking out for horror movie marathoning, especially if you want something a little more tame. If you can't stomach the revolting blood and guts and creature effects of the update, but I would be kind of interested in seeing if they would do a third take on this concept. Like it's been a while now. It's been longer now between the 86 film, and now from this film and the 86 film. So there's been a long gap. I always kind of hear that they're trying to get it off the ground, that they're working on concepts. I've heard of certain writers, directors working on the concepts, but it never really seems to go anywhere. But I wouldn't mind, because this is kind of a timeless kind of tale, and it's definitely worth revisiting. But for now, we can revisit the 58 film and the 86 film. Both great, worth a double feature as well. So definitely a huge thumbs up from me for both. So The Fly, 1958, check it out. 31 Days of Horror, doing horror reviews all this month in October. Be sure to stick around and stay tuned for more. Until next time, I'll see you later.